I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the most haunted city on earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And I'm JT Timmons.
That was so creepy.
Ooh, why? Why does it have to be creepy?
He's like, hello, I'm JT.
I'm JT.
I got the biggest ick right there. I was just like, anyways, now that JT has thoroughly disgusted me.
It's my job. I'm your husband.
Ick. So
I don't think you understand the husband's job.
maybe we need to reevaluate this. But anyways, so we are going to be talking about probably one of the most haunted universities in the United States. The Savannah College of Art and Design, which is my alumni. JT went there for his master's degree. Chris did not go there, but he lives in Savannah, and it's practically
Been around it forever. Yeah,
it's the campus of SCAD, is Savannah. So
absolutely.
So we're going to talk about that, but first we do have some patrons to thank.
Yes. We have some new patrons to thank. Parajunkies. Every single time I'm looking at total patrons, and then I say the word. I don't know. It's just a thing I do. Anyway, all right.
I know.
Emily V, Natalie Nicole, Megan Baker, and Ashley Blackman, thank y'all so much. We really, really, really appreciate you. This is how we continue doing what we do. So, like, when you become a Parajunkie and you join the Parajunkie fam, not only are you supporting us, but you get a bunch of cool stuff. Tell them what they get.
Yes, you get a lovely exclusive episode all the time from us. We make random episodes that we find that our Parajunkies really enjoy. Also, you get exclusive early access to these episodes. So JT edits them, puts them up on Patreon immediately, so you get it sometimes a week in advance. Also, you get a secret shop with fun merch that only Parajunkies can get. You can also get discounts on our regular merch, like the shirt that I'm wearing. Stay spooky, y'all. All of those fun things. So if you want to
And we get to know you.
Yes, we talk to them all the time.
Absolutely. Like we have some really incredible Parajunkies. Like,
it's very true.
Really incredible. We got some Madison fans. We got some Chris super fans. Fangirls.
No.
No. But anyways, but yes, thank you guys who do support us on Patreon.
Yes.
And if you want to become a Parajunkie, you can find us there on Patreon under the Savannah Underground.
And to all of our current Parajunkies, we love you.
Yes. So let's go ahead and dive into SCAD. So if you're not familiar with SCAD, it is a university focused on art and design, obviously by its name. But it doesn't have a campus. So basically what the school did is they bought a bunch of buildings around the downtown area of Savannah and turned them into dormitories, into school buildings, into administration buildings, all sorts of things. So when you buy up half the city of Savannah, of course you're going to get a haunted building or two. I went there as a performing arts major, and of course the building I was in did have its own spirit.
Yeah, you said a haunted building or two. Don't you mean a haunted building or like 90?
Right, exactly.
I mean, when you buy a building in Savannah,
one of them.
It has something.
We bought a house and we bought a ghost too. Like,
That's
I'm not
so
kidding.
true.
Oh, yeah,
we did that.
Real estate people should just go ahead and tell you right up. Yeah, and in Savannah, if you don't have a ghost in your house, you are second-class citizen.
It's so true.
You don't have a ghost in your house? Oh, bless your soul. No ghost? Well, you're not coming to the potluck.
Not the potluck. But yes, so one of the first places I'll tell y'all about is a personal experience that I had in Kreitz Hall, which is the Performing Arts building. Basically, that building used to be, from what I can tell, like a cotton warehouse.
That is correct.
Yeah, if you can't read it on the side of the building, it's printed still on the building. So
Thank God, it's really cool.
it is. It's a very cool building.
If they erase that, I'd be so pissed.
I know. So interestingly enough, there's a basement in that building, and it's so creepy because it has no windows. Obviously, it's a basement, but it's all brick walls. And they didn't, everything else in the building, it's very colorful, it's very like fun and interactive and things like that. Not the basement. They basically put all the music stuff in the basement. So your rehearsal spaces for music with like, pianos and stuff like that, that was down there. I would take vocal lessons. So I would be down there at least once or twice a week. And that basement always gives you the heebie-jeebies.
It's a heebie-jeebies
factory. Because it's dark and there's it's a long hallway and there's just like a quick turn that you can take. So I always would be down there because I would hold my rehearsals down there a lot. I directed a lot of musical kind of stuff while I was at SCAD. And so we would have rehearsals down there. I'd be the last one down there. And I'd come out and I'd see something dart across the hallway. And I would see this every single time I was down there, and then I would hear a little, which is like pitter patter, for those of you who couldn't hear that or aren't watching on YouTube. But basically, I'd hear the pitter patter, and then I'd see something run across like to that closed off area where the vending machines were. And I'm like, that's really weird. And so eventually I was like, is that a child? Because it looks like a child. And I'm like, who brought their kid down here? And that's not to say that there aren't students who have kids. And like, I'm like, maybe somebody is in rehearsal and they weren't watching their kid and their kid found their way down here. But I'm like, it was every single night and it did the same exact thing. And so I would follow it. I'd see it run in that area. You either hit a wall or you go up through the stairway. And that door to go to the stairway is really loud. So I'm like, whoever it is must be down here, in that little corner because I didn't hear the door open. I would have heard it. And I go over there and there's no one there. And then eventually I would just be like, okay, well, it's probably just ghosts, whatever, no big deal. But one day I'd be going to my voice lesson, which was on the opposite end of the hallway. And this time I would see it come from that crevice that I usually would watch it run off to, and it would start walking towards me while I was going down into my voice lesson. So I was like, okay, and I run into my voice teacher's room, and he's like, oh, you're early, hello. And I was like, I'm sorry, there's a ghost in the hallway. And he's like, yeah, that's the little girl. She's just down here. She doesn't really do much. She just kind of runs up and down the hallway because he's like, he was just so used to it because he was just one of the dungeon music teachers. So
one of the dungeon music teachers.
So he was just
So my main question is you're never like you almost don't acknowledge ghosts like to a certain degree. You acknowledge them, but you're never like this is a very interesting story for me to hear because we're driving and you're like a ghost and I'm like what? Do you see that ghost? We're walking like you see that? That's a spirit. And I'm like, I don't see anything. And but this you've paid a lot of attention to it, and it sounds like at first you didn't recognize it as a ghost like you almost always do with dead things. Is there a reason for that?
Well, I was 19 when this happened, so I feel like my abilities weren't as clear as they are now.
Okay, that makes sense.
So it's a very different experience, and I think too I had a hard time when I was early on in college because I was not super comfortable being on my own in general. So I didn't want to acknowledge a ghost being in a safe place, like a school. And I'm like, oh God, they're here too. Cause I had already had experiences in my dorm room, which we'll talk about in a bit. But I was like, oh, the buildings should be fine.
Yeah.
No. And so,
No.
and I just thought it was weird that I saw it every single night, which made me pay attention to it more because I was down there every night. So I was like, it's weird that it's happening every single time. I'm the only one in here.
Absolutely.
So, and then I didn't like that it followed me. And then after that experience, it never tried to follow me again, but it would do the same thing, just like boop, 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 run to the corner.
What did it do?
Boop, 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 boop.
Okay.
Yep.
So I've heard the little girl story several times, and I've worked in Kreitz a lot over the years.
Did you?
Yeah.
You've done everything.
Yes.
Well,
He's a man of mystery. I swear to God.
So one of the interesting things was identified as a little girl. People talk about it all the time. Hard to pin down why it was. But I had a friend, and it was like 2005, 2006, who relayed a story of being like the last one in the hall and coming out. And she was walking down the hall, not towards the elevator, but away from the elevator, walking down the hall, and something brushed the top of her head. She just felt it, and it was such a very distinct. She walked under something that was hanging, and so she looks up, and what she reported was a girl doing the dead man float, like in water, but above her, like just floating, and she the foot of the girl brushed the top of her head. And so I went looking, and it turns out that building at one point had a terrible flooding issue, where when the rainy season came, the basement would literally fill with water.
It still does.
And without a real drainage situation, there was a period of time when it was a warehouse that the basement became kind of unusable for storing things. And the story that came from that was one of the child of the owners of the company or something of that nature would just play in the building. It was her playground, and she'd run all around. She'd have all this fun. But one day, one of these flash floods, and in Savannah, and in the 90s, it was very obvious. The flash flooding of Savannah was intense. About 3 o'clock every day in the summer, the rain would come, and you could not navigate Savannah. You couldn't drive through it.
Sure.
My sister lost a pickup truck. Like, she was driving
No
a
way,
pickup
it flooded?
truck, and it flooded. It went under the water. And it died, and she could not get it to come back.
Just Jinhee?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, geez, the flooding was bad, but for as wet as it is in Savannah, it's kind of considered still a drought, because there was a time when the rain would come, and from 3 to 5, you just did not travel. You just hunkered down and said, "I'm not going anywhere." But apparently, she was in the basement. The rains came, flooded the basement, and she drowned.
Oh, wow. That's creepy. That the brushing of the top of the head, bro.
I would have
was
lost
like,
my ever living mind, and so I feel like that's why she didn't do that to me.
Well, and it was one of those things because most people see her running.
Yeah,
most people just catch her out of the corner of her eye and something like that. So when she told me the story, I was just like, that doesn't, that's weird. It's strange.
It's a weird flex.
What a weird thing to but fascinating. But it didn't go with any other story that I had. So when I went looking to see the history of the building, and mind you, I never found the girl. I never found a story of a girl dying. I never, it was just layers of, oh, interesting. This building used to have such a flooding problem that they had to take the bottom floor and basically make it useless, because you can't keep your cotton where it's going to flood. So, they just sort of, and it used to be storage. And they were like, well, we're not going to store anything down there.
Exactly.
So there, I was thinking about moving on to the O house, but do you have something else to say? You look like you have something else to say about Kreitz.
Oh, no, not about Kreitz. So I was actually going to move on to O house as well.
Move on in. Let's do it.
Well, I was going to move on to O house, but I did want to say my dorm story before we talk about O house, because so everybody, when you come to Savannah, everybody talks about O house, even if you didn't go to SCAD, because it's really well talked about on tours and things like that, because it's extremely haunted. But what they don't talk about is their new builds, their new dorms that they have. They have this like little colony over on the west side of Savannah. It was
Right
not
off of
like
Boundary
that.
Street.
Yep, literally right by us. And so I lived there before it became what it is now. And I was there the first year that it was built. And I was like, there shouldn't be anything in here. And I didn't realize that new buildings could be haunted at that point. But I don't think it is from something that they built the building on. I think it's from something that my roommate brought in, because I had a very bizarre roommate. All
classic good college stories start right there.
Is this the one named after a state?
After a state? No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
No,
Gotcha.
not her. So basically, the way the dorm.
Oh, this roommate.
Yes.
I've heard about this roommate.
I had a lot of them
y'all.
because for some reason this dorm didn't keep people long. It was very transient, very weird. That's not the point of the story, though.
Yeah, sorry.
But the point being is that I had technically 3 roommates because it was 2 rooms, and it was like suite style. So we had a living room and 2 rooms. 2 people shared each room. So technically, this was my suite mate. But I knew who 2 of my roommates were going to be because we had, decided before we got there that we were going to be roommates. But the third person that we were going to be roommates with, she decided last minute, she was like, hey, I found somebody else I want to live with, so I'm going to switch with somebody from their suite, and she's going to live with you guys. And we're like, okay, cool, whatever, that's fine. Had no idea who this person was, didn't know anything about her. And she basically, she shows up, and I'll change her name for the context of the story just in case she watches this, but basically, we'll call her Rebecca.
If Rebecca watches this show, can we have her as a guest?
I highly doubt it because she left on very weird terms, so I highly doubt that she watches this.
If you do watch it, Rebecca, please hit us up.
So Rebecca basically moves in, and we, the 3 of us who knew each other, we were very excited to meet her. We were very welcoming. We were like, hey, so nice to meet you. I made her a little welcome gift basket. She didn't say a word to us the entire time. She kind of just sat in her room and just was putting up her Godzilla dolls and things like that.
Oh, I like her.
Yeah. Well, she was interesting, but
I love Godzilla.
Yeah, but she was putting up her Godzilla dolls and stuff, and we're like, okay, well, if you want to talk to us later, we'll be here. The first odd experience that I had was the first night that we were there. Basically, I was sitting in my room with the door open. I was doing my makeup, getting ready to go to dinner with my family. And she was the only other person in the suite. And very loudly off her laptop, she was playing a video of how to properly decapitate a chicken. And I was like...
It's easy.
Right. Right.
Why is that? Why do you have to...
Properly.
No, I think she just wants to watch a chicken get decapitated. It's real simple to cut a chicken's head off.
So that was the weird thing, though, is that so that was the first odd thing. I was like, okay, she's into some different things. Cool, whatever. The next day, I walk into our bathroom, and she has a dead bat draining blood into our shower. She's draining the blood into our shower. And I was like, hey, Rebecca, totally fine if you have hobbies and whatnot, but can you not drain the blood in the shower? Because we only have one shower.
And can you not murder bats, please?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, yeah. And she was like, I'm going to...
This is an animal,
This is the third word she's said this entire time. And she's like, I was going to hang it on my wall. And I was like, okay, well, can you drain the blood outside, so that way it's... And so she got really upset about that, and she took the bat and stormed out of the room. And
then she snatches the bat and walks out.
And then that same night, we walk in, and she's playing with the Ouija board. And I'm like, okay, Rebecca. I was like, can you not do that in the space?
Now you sound like a nagging roommate, though.
I know. Well, that's the thing.
Sucks.
I know, exactly. But I was like, the Ouija board thing, I was like, that's too far for me because I don't like it, and I don't care, whatever you want to believe. She's like, it's my spirit board. I'm like, it's definitely not. you're not talking to anything right. And she was, and at first I chalked it up to being she was from New Orleans. Like she, I was like, maybe it's like a part of her practice or whatever. I was like, but it was weird because she didn't do anything else outside of these odd things. But then she would start to have these weird like sleepwalking issues, but she would talk to you in her sleep. Oh. And so she would wake up in her sleep and stand over my friend Carla, and she would stand over her, who was sharing the room with her, and she would be like, Carla, wake up.
Bruh.
And Carla would be like, why are you standing over me? And she would tell her like very odd things, like my dad drags dead bodies out of the water back in New Orleans, and her dad did work for the military. So I was like, maybe this is like a repressed memory or something that she has. But then she would start saying things to Carla about, like very just odd things that she shouldn't be talking about and wouldn't be talking about any other time except for 3:00 in the morning. And so it became like a regular thing where eventually we were like, hey, you can practice whatever you want to practice, but you just can't practice it in the room, because she was bringing out her Ouija boards. She was holding like mini seances where she would light candles, and she would do like things like that. And as a witch, I'm like, that's not, like a ritual of sorts. So you're definitely trying to commune with spirits, and I'm not okay with doing that in this situation just because I don't trust you. But then she left because she got sick of us bothering her about the things that she was doing. And so pretty much after that, though, we had never had a spirit like interaction. I had never had a spirit interaction inside this dorm whatsoever until she left. And then after she left, I would every night feel like somebody was standing on the outside of our doorway, because I would see feet marks, like feet, I'd see like the shadow of the feet, because we kept the hallway light on. And you'd see him walk from one end, like out, like past the door, and then walk up to the door and just stand there.
Bruh.
And it felt like somebody was trying to get in every single night. And it was so menacing feeling, because it wasn't like, it wouldn't move. And then it felt like just like this big looming spirit. And then also
she let something in.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's like, I believe like from all the stuff she was doing, and she might have done this on purpose because I really pissed her off with like the bat thing, but it's like I believe she definitely let something in, because there was no activity in that room whatsoever until she left. Wow. And it didn't go away.
It's the don't feed the ghosts issue. If somebody starts feeding a ghost, the ghost gets more and more powerful, but as long as you're feeding it, it's okay. If she stops feeding it, then the ghost becomes aggressive. It's looking for food. It's looking for the thing that was feeding it. And that is just having people arrive without really knowing each other. The spiritual energy that follows you may have nothing to do with your personality. It may just be something attached to you. But if it has friction with other people, because you hear this a lot, like in dorms and in situations where you're forced to live with people that you don't really know, it can spark a lot of paranormal activity simply because there's friction between the spirits that you're carrying and the spirits that they're carrying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Another weird thing too, though, is I had like a protection like thing that I had hanging on my wall, and it was very solidly put in there, and it was made of glass, so I wanted to make sure it wasn't gonna fall. And one day I walked into my room after like having like felt the energy of whatever has been standing in front of my doorway, and the amulet fell right off the wall, like with so much force. And so I was like, okay, that's great. And so I basically, and after she left too, nobody could stay in that room. Like
she probably messed that room up for like everybody. I was just about to say that.
You just created a portal.
Nobody stayed in that room for more than 6 weeks at a time. Gracious. It was a constant rotation of roommates.
So this bat thing. Did she have a gun? Did she have like a 22 to ping a bat?
No, I don't know how she got the bat. Like, for real, though, like, I have no idea where the bat came from.
She must have found it dead. I mean, you don't just kill a bat unless you have a gun,
clean.
right?
It looked clean.
You can catch a bat. Catching bats is not nearly as difficult as you think it would be.
Where would you catch a bat in Savannah?
I wouldn't.
Oh, by the way, for those who don't know this, Savannah is lousy with bats.
Yes, it is.
Savannah is a bat city.
No, I know. But where are they?
Apparently, you go to Moon River Brewing Company.
You go by lampposts. Because the bugs will come to the light, and you'll see them, and a lot of times you'll just think they're moths, but they're actually bats.
Yeah.
And what you do is you throw a small thing up.
Yeah, like an aluminium foil.
It'll
chase
it down, and as it gets close, you throw a towel on top of it.
Yeah, gum.
And then you take the towel and you just whack it.
Yeah, it wasn't gory at all, though. It didn't look like.
No, I would not.
Yeah.
I do not condone harming animals at all.
She
Especially
was fine
not
with it.
bats. That's the reason why like mosquitoes aren't is as
They're-
bad as they
they're
are.
literally
here.
saving
Yeah.
our lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, bats.
Seriously, and
Wow, that is crazy, Maddie.
it was just
Such
that
a
was my entry to
bonkers.
adulthood. So if you wonder,
Welcome to the adult world.
if you wonder why I am the way I am, that was a very shaping moment of my life.
Wow.
Man.
Wow. Okay.
But it definitely ruined something for all those kids that lived there afterwards.
So, O House.
Yeah, O House is notorious.
This is the one. This is the first, and this is the ghost story. I feel like everybody at SCAD knows. I mean, if you don't know it, you're not in. I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, it is a very, very common ghost story at SCAD. So I'm excited to tell the world about it, and because it's good.
It's an interesting building in general because it's all open air. So it's kind of
Motel.
It is. It was a motel.
Yeah, it was absolutely a
and
motel.
they renovated it. So
Ish.
yeah, that's a good point.
That is a janky dorm.
Yes, it is. But it's the weird thing about it is that every floor has its own ghost, and that's I think why people tell the story so much, because it almost gets worse as you go up. It's like you start out.
That's fair. That is. I never really thought about it, but you're right.
Yeah.
They get worse as you go higher up.
And because it was a motel, do you think that the majority of these ghost stories come from
100%.
the fact that it was a motel?
Oh God,
Absolutely.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Especially the ones that they've identified, like the ones that people, because the compulsory little girl ghost,
Yep.
it was just the fourth floor, is very much a girl who, according to legend and belief, was the victim of a child killer, and who was picked out from the hotel, was literally picked up and killed, and the concept being she's looking for her family. She's trying to find that room, and there is a room that is specifically very haunted on the fourth floor with this presence.
And then at the beginning, you start with the prostitute ghost, which is just super simple residual haunting kind of stuff. People hear the high heels clicking, and sometimes smell perfume and
right.
like things like that. Really common, especially for a motel. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that a woman, just frequented that motel because that was just super accessible for her line of work,
And for y'all that want to come to Savannah and see it, it's Oglethorpe, and it's right by the Civic Center.
It's Oglethorpe and
Barnard.
Barnard,
Barnard
yeah.
and Jefferson.
Yeah.
Between Barnard and Jefferson. That's exactly it.
Yeah, you can't miss it. It's bright colors.
When I upload this to YouTube, I am going to, in the tags, I'm going to put SCAD new student orientation. So when people Google
Good
it, this
Lord.
comes up, and
They can't stay there until their sophomore year, so they've got time to find out.
to really hate it.
Yeah. But basically, though, you start out with that, and she's like super simple residual haunting sort of stuff. Then you move up to the spirit that I always wanted. I never lived at O House, but I did envy the people who had this spirit because I believe she might have been a spirit of a maid or like a very motherly kind of figure. But she oftentimes would tidy things up in people's rooms because there's like a really famous story of a student who, because SCAD stands for sleep comes after death. So basically students will stay up all night working on their projects because oftentimes you have very elaborate projects that you have very little time to complete. So this student was staying up all night working on something and fell asleep at their desk. And their desk was covered in art supplies and things like that. It was like super messy and whatnot. And when they woke up, everything was neatly ordered and put in little stacks and piles, like somebody had during the night organized it for them. And I was so jealous of that. I was like, wow, I want that,
You know what, I don't know. You know what really strikes me about that story in particular is the fact that stories are spread usually when they're dark. We know that, right? When someone's dead, when something's standing in the corner or whispering to you from your bathroom. That is when stories are usually spread like wildfire. But I've heard this story, and it makes you think, like, if it isn't true, why would someone make up a story about a ghost that cleans your room?
A lot of ghosts are mundane.
So
a lot
mundane.
of ghosts are very much just, present. And so, you don't hear those stories.
No.
They're there, and people encounter them.
Yeah.
But because they don't do anything, or what they do seems so small, although a ghost that moves objects will always score higher on the interest.
On the tellability.
Because that means, this ghost came in and made a cup of tea, or moved a piece of furniture, or things like that. Regardless of whether or not it was a boogity, it was definitely an instance of high paranormal activity.
Absolutely. Well, and I mean, think about it. Amongst college students, everyone's like, I want the
the house cleaning ghost.
Well, yeah, I got the looming oaf that stood at my doorway, and I'm just
you did
like,
get a looming oaf.
And I'm just like, oh my.
You married a looming oaf.
I was just about to say that. I was just about to say that. I'm here. It was me.
It stuck around.
It stuck around.
Yeah.
I've stopped trying to scare Madison because there's just no way to do it unless you're gonna do the whole cheap, like, come out from behind the door
jump scare,
which will scare anybody,
right?
Yeah,
that would scare my grandfather, who's a military veteran, did 3 tours of Vietnam, that's just not fair. I've tried to, in the beginning of our relationship, I've always tried to, like, freak you out and, like, be like, oh, what's that over there? This, that, and the other, and kind of, like, paint pictures in your head like I did with my sister, and that's why she's so damaged in that way. And so, like, and so it's just, like, I don't know. Like, I've just stopped trying to scare you.
Well, I mean, after Rebecca leaving bleeding out animals in my shower, nothing scares me.
Yeah.
But, and the sheer amount of ghosts that I've encountered in my life.
Oh, yeah.
No, you're not going to scare me. I'm the worst person to take to a haunted house because I'm just, like, looking at the monster makeup and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so cool. And they're like, and I'm like, no. I'm like, you're cute.
You're cute.
But
so O House.
But yeah, O House though, and then you get up to where the serial killer, child killer is located, and that's where things really get rough for people because people have reported, being scratched, being bruised, and, like, there is that room, that dorm room that never seems to stay occupied because people tend to move out immediately because the occurrences are too intense for them. So a lot of times,
I thought it was in a dorm room.
Yeah, that's what. Oh my God, you're awful. Exiled. You can leave now. You're so pleased with yourself. But anyways, but yes.
And the serial killer, child killer, layered story. It's a layered story because trying to figure out who he was in close proximity, it is believed that he was one of the inmates who died over on Oatland Island during the experimental yellow fever irradiation, because he was an inmate that volunteered to go and be medically experimented on.
Sure.
And a handful of them died out on Oatland Island. That's a totally different story too. But did I tell you my Candler story about going to Candler?
Yes.
That was him.
Oh, that was him.
Yes.
Okay.
That according to legend,
sure.
Because again, it is hard to even figure out who this person is because you would think child murder in Savannah, I should be able to just look that up. I should be able to microfiche that up. It's not. It's almost impossible to find, and the concept and construct came from, like, an inmate a person who worked at the hospital.
Okay.
Telling the story of because apparently the way he killed children was he crushed them. He like hugged them until they died.
Wow.
And this person who worked at the hospital at the time that the man died stated that one of his coworkers died in the night, and it was supposedly he was crushed to death.
Oh my Lord.
And they were like, nobody knows how it happened. Nobody knows what happened, but
Jeez.
his ribs were broken. He was, something had just squeezed him so hard that he passed in his bed. Yeah.
So, when was the child killed?
50s, I believe.
Okay.
The
So
1950s.
it would have been before Samuel Little
Absolutely.
visited Savannah.
Yes.
I was thinking like, you know how like Bundy, tried a kid right at the end.
So the whole reason why all the evidence kind of points to this one guy, because
Yeah.
again, we don't have an answer. It's
Sure.
just the story that everyone tells.
Sure.
Is that apparently he was the janitor of the hotel that
Oh.
became
Lord.
O House, and children were missing from the hotel. Like all the links, all the roads that came in, and that's why it wasn't necessarily a Savannah story. Because these kids were from everywhere.
Yeah.
They were,
Absolutely.
so like the stories that were told were in their hometowns.
Gotcha.
So and so went missing here, and so went missing there, and so in Savannah, there are touches of the stories, like child goes missing, things like that, and that was another thing. According to, again, these are so hard to validate, but according to legend, the children were never found. And so there's a place in O House that a lot of people it's because O House is like a very tall building, but there's also like a flat. It might be the cafeteria.
It's an annex.
back.
Yeah,
it's the annex. A lot of people think that there used to be either a water tower or something there where the killings happened, like right there on property. And I was like, this is it gets so entangled. But that figure, is a lumen figure, this giant looming scary figure, has just gotten more and more tidbits, people trying to figure it out.
That's so bizarre.
Yeah.
It is.
I mean, I never heard like the full extent of like the child killer story. I just always heard like serial killer on the floor and
Yeah.
things like that. So that is horrifying.
Have we missed any ghosts?
All right, y'all, we are going to be talking about a little bit of a sensitive topic here in this next segment. There's going to be a lot of talk of suicide and things like that. So this is an official trigger warning. If you do feel like you need help or you need assistance of officials, you can dial 988 for the National Suicide Hotline. No, those are the three.
We mentioned
the
the
girl.
Yeah.
On the fourth floor.
on the floor.
Because
Okay.
the belief is that the serial killer killed the girl.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're on different floors.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
Got it.
She's running on the fourth floor, and then there's the sixth. Does it go to sixth floors? The
No.
top floor, the highest floor. Is that
Yeah.
the fourth floor?
Isn't there
Yeah,
a
that's the
hooker
fourth
ghost?
floor.
I thought there was a hooker
I already
ghost.
said that one.
spoke
Okay,
about
okay,
the
okay.
hooker
Yeah.
ghost,
That's
the
what I
serial
thought.
killer ghost, the little girl ghost,
The cleaning ghost.
the cleaning lady ghost, but there's also the suicide ghost.
Oh, I forgot
The
about
girl
that
who
one.
threw herself
Yes.
off the roof.
Oh, yeah.
Or the highest floor. I was actually called by a girl who, because of medical issues, had a room of her own on the top floor of O House. And I get this call in the middle of the night because she got my number from a person who got my number. Anyway, I get this call, and it's like, help me. Something is horribly, horribly wrong. There's something going on in this room, and I don't know what it is. And I'm having terrible nightmares, and being in this room is just making me sad and sad and sad. And I don't know why. I'm not sad, but I feel unnaturally sad. And so going through it, we learned that room has had its issues, and the person who stayed in the room before actually left SCAD and went into like mental care because they were highly suicidal. But the question kept coming back and forth, and that's it segues pretty well into the fact that in the 90s, SCAD had a reputation for suicide.
Yep, they did.
People were just killing themselves left and right, to include a professor who I believe set himself on fire.
Yes, I remember that.
Then there was the student who
that.
threw himself off of Havisham Hall. He took all his clothes off and jumped off of Havisham Hall, the roof. There was countless, all these interesting things. But there were 3 suicides that happened all in 91, I think, or all very close to each other. And it was just what is going on at this school?
Yeah.
And it wasn't that long ago that one of the students jumped off of the parking garage.
When I was
and the bridge. Yeah, that's right.
When
That was even sooner. Yeah.
When I was a freshman at SCAD, we had 3 people commit suicide in that same year, which was just so bizarre because
and SCAD.
It's unfortunate.
And it's not publicized highly.
No.
You usually find out through a strain. It takes a long time before somebody's like, oh, that was a SCAD
It's
student.
because they don't. Media doesn't publish suicides.
Yeah,
That's
anything
fair
about
enough.
them.
Yeah.
The but it is a weird reputation for a school to have because I remember before I left, I had a ex-boyfriend of mine who lived across the street from my first grade music teacher. Very random, but she saw me leaving the house one time and she was like, oh, I saw that you're going to SCAD. She's like, isn't that the suicide school?
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm sorry, what?
And literally had that name for a while.
Wow.
Yeah, she literally...
It was out of hand because, I said, professors, teachers,
Yeah.
and students, were both victims of whatever it was that was really driving the suicide rate.
It's with SCAD, you have a lot of people that go there from different backgrounds and all of that, artists. There are more artists with depression.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Than a bunch of people have depression, obviously. But
what drives
when
you
it comes
to express your feelings,
Exactly,
your
there
emotions,
you
what
go,
oftentimes
that's it.
drives a person to be inspired to art,
yes,
is oftentimes deep introspection, deep emotional turmoil. So yeah, it is fascinating, and it comes to the idea that there's this very solid cloud over SCAD, because I remember it was a hard haul to get suicide school out of out of its vernacular, but it never really left. It never really got
Well, and I think because it didn't change its practices as well either. Because I can see if you have depression, how you can be very easily triggered by some of the curriculum in certain classes. Because you have to be very introspective in a lot of classes, even in your foundation classes, they want you to dig deep and divulge your trauma in front of 30 people you don't know. That can be very harmful to some people. So
I want to just quickly move on before we end this episode and talk about one last thing. It's the Savannah Law old building.
the new.
So that is Kendler.
That's Kendler.
Yeah,
that's
the new
Kendler.
administration.
Okay,
building.
what are some? Is there any? It's super haunted. A
Oh
building,
my
right?
lord, it's super haunted. It was literally a hospital for 100 years, and then it was like a mental institution for another. It was a charter, mental institution. It was where the criminally insane were kept on a ward on the top floor. It was absolutely a place of deep death. It's where the morgue tunnel is, that we talked about, that goes into Forsyth. Yep. So you're looking at hospitals in general are places of suffering and death. And so every hospital has, you want some good ghost stories, talk to the overnight nurses, because there's a practicality to a place where people accept and understand and experience death, having lingering, it's also where people say goodbye. It's where people have their last moments of life with their loved ones. So, yeah, SCAD took over
a couple years ago.
Yeah, a couple of years ago. Candler was empty for decades. The hospital building itself was empty for decades. The last occupants were a mental institution, and after that closed, it was just this big, looming, empty, scary building.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of just an odd placement for it too, because you go up this alleyway to get to the true front of the building, and so it feels weird and kind of otherworldly when you're going down the alley and then you walk you roll up to this massive like historic building that just feels odd and
intriguingly, that alley was severed for a while because it was actually because the old retirement home was also the hospital. So there was, as it moved into modernity, the big gigantic. So when you're looking at the building, you've got this old 1800s building, and then this large looming apartment structure, but the apartment structure actually was a part of the hospital because it was the main hospital of Savannah. It had this very large, big campus. And now, and it was weird because it was facing, technically the front doors are facing nothing. It's like a parking lot that isn't really there.
What I would love to know now is, because they made it the administration building after I left. So I would love to know now, because I did find out that they ripped a lot of the interior out of it, or the original interior, and they replaced it to make it, SCAD style. That's a very big thing, has to be on brand. And so it makes me wonder if that didn't stir things up as well, because they messed with the original interior.
Yeah,
because that happens a lot when you do that in Savannah.
I was so close to going to law school because they opened a law school in that building. I was so close. So I was like, I need to go to law school just so I can be in the building.
Yeah, but. So if you are a current SCAD student and you know anything about any occurrences that have happened after they did the renovations and things like that, I would love to hear your stories, because I've not heard much from many SCAD students as of that point. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Share with us your ghost stories. We love hearing ghost stories as much as we love telling them.
Absolutely. But thank you guys for listening to this episode. It's been fun to go down memory lane and divulge some of my trauma for you. But I hope you guys enjoyed. If you don't already follow us on social media, you can follow us on TikTok under Haunted City Podcasts, on Instagram under The Most Haunted City on Earth. You can find us on Patreon and become a parajunkie under the Savannah Underground. And then, of course, you can get merch on hauntedcitypodcast.com. But with that, my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And stay spooky, y'all.